Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for waiting for me. Thank you to all of our subscribers, members, and all of the viewers for tuning in for another live stream. For those of you who are new to us, we have these live streams regularly just to open the space up for all of the community to share their thoughts, views, have a chat, and direct any questions you might have for me as well, and have more of an in-depth talk apart from the regular short videos with relevant updates that you won't find obviously on mainstream media, which requires people like us to do more work to give you the image of what's happening. So I posted a video earlier on with details about the ceasefire, important developments about the ceasefire. And again, everything should be taken with a pinch of salt. There were hopeful situations before where we thought it was very close, an agreement was very close. You had Hamas agreeing on a ceasefire deal that was spoken about between the head of the CIA and the heads of the negotiating delegations from Qatar and Egypt as well at the time, and obviously Israel refused. We had a lot of instances where the Israeli negotiating delegation agreed on a ceasefire that later Benjamin Netanyahu refused. Now, mind you, the formulas are not changing that heavily. It's just the fact that the Palestinian people are still surviving, going through this, and the Palestinian resistance is still steadfast and strong and humiliating the Israeli army, because initially, remember, the talk was eliminating them, not talking to them. Then there was more pressure. Then the Israelis started to say that the Palestinians need to take so many steps back. It's unrealistic, delusional. But the thick lines, the foundations of the ceasefire have not changed. The only thing that's changing is Israel's situation, Israel's catastrophic situation internally and globally as well, and them realizing, including senior figures who are admitting publicly that the Hamas and the Palestinian resistance are going nowhere. So Israel will have to give in somewhat in any way, shape, or form, at least when it comes to the basics with the ceasefire. Now, obviously, the United States, they had their efforts. They previously tried to apply pressure on Israel. Then we had Joe Biden going out with this unprecedented statement, really, from the US president to come and, as if he was speaking on behalf of Israel at the time, to declare that Benjamin Netanyahu agreed on a ceasefire and we need to go ahead with it. Obviously, Israel did not accept it at the time. The latest development came after a use of a new terminology by the US administration in an attempt to make Hamas agree and find it more acceptable. Obviously, Hamas, who's representing the Palestinian resistance, you're talking about 13 movements in these negotiations, they are obviously showing leniency because they have an interest in ending the war, but they don't have an interest in ending the war at any cost. And they are still sticking to their core demands. And it's important to know that this is a position of strength. This is not a position of weakness. As a matter of fact, the mere fact that Israel and the US are negotiating with Hamas, whether indirectly through a third party, whatever it is, shows that they realize that they are there, they are the power over there representing the people democratically, and they have to speak with them. That's when it comes to the ceasefire. And obviously, I gave in a few more details in that video. Obviously, the Israelis are in Qatar now, trying to finalize everything. Whether it will come to fruition or not, that to a very high level depends on Benjamin Netanyahu, and if he would agree on it or not, because Benjamin Netanyahu is still facing pressure from people who have very extreme views. Really and truly, it's a representation of Israel, unfiltered, but these people are very vocal about it. And one of them is not only asking to continue the war in Gaza and have an all-out war in Lebanon, he's also asking to occupy Sinai. Amichai Eliyahu, the subject of tonight, the Otzma Yehudit member, government minister, close person to Benjamin Netanyahu, who proposed to drop a nuclear bomb on Gaza and wasn't punished for it or removed from the government or anything of the sort. They just, stopped him from attending a couple of meetings. But then he continued to attend meetings. Now he is on an offensive and he is pushing for a campaign, a big campaign, calling for Israel to occupy Sinai. He has many reasons to call Israel to occupy Sinai: historical rights, the land of Greater Israel, and obviously the need for Israel to occupy Sinai for its own interests. Obviously, we've been speaking about Sinai and the fact that this area is under threat from Israel, and Egypt realizes that to a large extent. But now some people like that are vocal. Now, an important thing to note here is that, firstly, these people are allowed to say these things, people in the government. Usually, if you have a minister in your government, there should be red lines as to what you can say and what you cannot say with countries you have diplomatic relations with, let alone a country like Egypt and the level of importance when it comes to Israel's relationship with Egypt. Clearly, there are no red lines, and these people are able to talk. Another thing here is it could be a possibility that these are test balloons, these statements, to see the potential response. And these people are enabled. They are enabled by the Israeli government. They're enabled by Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel as a state enables them. That's why you have them in power, calling the shots and implementing genocidal policies and crimes against humanity. So Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'm going to read through some of the details about this, but they're calling to occupy Sinai. This man had a campaign. He launched a website as well, selling T-shirts as if to market the idea through clothing as well, not just through public speaking, so that people can buy and call to occupy Sinai, and officially recognize all of the territories across historical Palestine, including the Golan Heights, as just sovereign Israeli territories, and that's it. No ifs, no buts, no international community, no nothing. He didn't go to Jordan and Iraq yet. Clearly, they take it step by step. One important thing is, in this campaign that they're pushing, they are also trying to revive the ideology of the Irgun Tzva'i Leumi, which is one of the terrorist organizations that the Zionists had before the establishment of Israel, and an offshoot of the Haganah, because they had a more extreme stance when it comes to the British mandate at the time. And the British mandate labeled them as a terrorist organization as well at the time, although they had prime ministers. Like one of them is Menachem Begin, if I'm not mistaken. And they are pushing for their ideology, a more militant ideology for a group that formed later, what is now called the IDF, but it's as if they want to bring things backwards and have their own army. Now, there is a sentiment that you already have, splits in the Israeli army and brigades that are more aligned with radical people and radical ideologies, but to have the logo of this organization that was dismantled over 76 years ago and merged into the Israeli army shows the deep division. Again, all of these things, the deep division that's happening in Israel. And it's as if it's a call to have another paramilitary in Israel that is subject to the will of the radical squatters of the West Bank. And we've seen the tensions with the latest dispersing of this settlement these outposts. Obviously, these people have outposts in the West Bank that they try to legitimize and control and, legalize. One of them was dismantled by Israel, by the Israeli army, and there was a lot of violence against the army. Some people condemned it, not all of them, though. The only people that outright went out against it was the chief of staff in Israel, Herzi Halevi. But we didn't have a lot of condemnation from people like Benjamin Netanyahu or Yoav Gallant and other people in the government. Now, with regards to this person and his call to occupy Sinai, there was an article in the Times of Israel. I'm going to read you a couple of things from it, not all of it, just not to take too much of your time. And obviously, I added some information here, and I will also add further information when it comes to potential international justification if Israel were to attack and occupy Sinai. By the way, they will receive international backing from certain countries. When we say international, the United States, UK, a couple of European countries. But the Times of Israel, they had an article in which they said far-right heritage minister Amichai Eliyahu on Wednesday retweeted a social media post promoting the sale of merchandise calling for the occupation of the Sinai Peninsula more than 4 decades after Israel returned the territory to Egypt as part of the two countries' landmark 1979 peace treaty. The tweet by user Ayelet Lash called the public to purchase a shirt printed with what is supposed to be a map of Israel, including the West Bank, Gaza, and Sinai, emblazoned with the slogan, "Occupation Now." So the campaign that this man is promoting, and he's a government minister, person in power, is occupation now. You have movements, peace now, and the occupation. These people are saying occupation now, further occupation. Neither the minister's spokesperson nor one representing the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, responded to requests for comment. It's because they support him. Ben-Gvir is the leader of Eliyahu's far-right Otzma Yehudit party, or Jewish Power in English. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office also declined to comment when asked for its view on the minister's post. Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry said earlier this year that Cairo is committed to upholding its peace treaty with Israel despite concerns over the IDF's military operations in southern Gaza, which borders Egypt as well as Israel. Eliyahu has a history of contentious rhetoric, including accusing Israel's security chiefs of rebelling against the current coalition, calling anti-government protesters evil, and dubbing Bank of Israel Governor Amir Yaron a savage. Last November, he sparked international outrage by claiming that dropping a nuclear bomb on the Gaza Strip was an option, a statement called detached from reality by Benjamin Netanyahu. That statement was later cited by South Africa in a motion accusing Israel of genocide before the International Court of Justice, prompting Eliyahu to later brag that even The Hague, they knew my position. In an interview with the Times of Israel in February, Eliyahu, the son of Safed Chief Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu and grandson of late Sfaradic Chief Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, lashed out at the international community for objecting to voluntary Palestinian immigration from and renewed Israeli settlement of Gaza. Where there is settlement, there will be security, he said. You don't need to speak to people out of weakness. And it's preferable to return to settlements rather than war and killing. So his view of stability is more settlements. Calls for the re-establishment of settlements evacuated during Israel's 2005 disengagement from Gaza have increased on the political right since October the 7th, while Netanyahu has come out against the idea of Israel building settlements in Gaza. After the war, 11 ministers and 15 coalition lawmakers, including Eliyahu, attended a mass conference in January advocating the rebuilding of Jewish settlements in the heart of Gaza Strip. More than half of Israelis oppose annexing the Gaza Strip and reestablishing settlements uprooted during the disengagement, according to a Hebrew University poll established in December. Now, this is coming 2 weeks after movements started to call for occupation in Lebanon, settlements in Lebanon. I had a couple of more details, but this was the main bit that I want to share with you in that article. Obviously, him, his party leader, and Smotrich, all of these people supported the idea of the Greater Israel. The Greater Israel, not just Sinai, from the Nile to the Euphrates. Smotrich, the finance minister and one of the strongest people in the Israeli government applying pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, he has conferences with maps of the Greater Israel, stretching from Iraq to central Egypt. And this man's statement, Eliyahu, they're coming just 2 weeks after we had a movement, 2 or 3 weeks, and I spoke about it at the time, a movement in Israel established a call with protests in the north to call for settlements in southern Lebanon. And they're saying that we have a right over Lebanon, and in one of the meetings that they called people to, they started having these biblical relations to lands in southern Lebanon, quoting things from the Bible, from the Torah, the religious books, about the importance of South Lebanon for Israel. So the same situation that we have in Palestine is, copy and paste situation, really. They'll copy and paste it on southern Lebanon, copy and paste it on Sinai. That's easy, 10 commandments. And then in other parts of the Middle East. And again, this person is enabled. We haven't had a condemnation from the Israeli government, from Netanyahu, or from this man's office. Clearly, why are you silent? Now, whilst we simultaneously have talks to get a ceasefire, we need to understand the mentality of these people. And if they would reach a ceasefire, why they would reach a ceasefire, it's because they have to, and that they've been humiliated by the Palestinian resistance and the resistance fronts, not because they seek peace. They're not peace seekers. These people are reckless expansionists, and they're bigots. They always look to expand their territory, and regardless of what other people say or other countries do. But when they are faced with, obviously, opposition that deters them, this is when they concede. Israel proved throughout history that they only understand the language of force. They left Sinai after force, southern Lebanon force, and Gaza force, and now they're conceding after force as well, and that after being so arrogant about eliminating Hamas and eliminating the Palestinian resistance and not talking, and they have to give in and they need to submit, and this is how we will solve the problem. So this is what I wanted to share with you, and I'll open the space up for all of you and your participation. Again, everyone, welcome to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's have a look. Firstly, thank you, Sumera and Nivea, for your supers. Much appreciated. And again, welcome everyone. If you wouldn't mind, obviously, if anyone has anything to highlight it, if you wouldn't mind, so I can address it quickly with a lot of messages coming in. Dawood Happy, Salams, why is the Rafah crossing closed? I remember a time where it was open to all. When opening it solved the supply of aid issues. If Egypt can't open, are they complicit in genocide? Well, just a quick background. The Rafah crossing, well, now obviously it's destroyed, firstly. Israel destroyed it. And it was open from the Egyptian side when the Palestinian side was there. However, before Israel destroyed it now, and they're looking to move it towards Karm Abu Salim or Kerem Shalom, which is the most southern eastern part of Gaza that has borders with Israel and Egypt, so that Israel can have more control. But before that, it was a trio agreement between the Palestinian Authority of the West Bank, not Gaza, and Egypt and Israel, and all of them had to agree with regards to opening the Rafah crossing. It's an absurd situation, but that's the agreement that was there. Now, from the Egyptian perspective, they had no problem in having it open, and they wanted to open it. The problems came from the Israeli side. And Egypt, obviously, they follow the treaties that they have with them when it comes to this agreement, something that I personally criticize, especially in a situation where you have a genocide going in. The least you can do is obviously allow aid in to the people, regardless of any treaties or agreements. That's the least one can do, and obviously allow people with urgent medical treatment requirements to leave and get life-saving treatment abroad. Obviously, Egypt did not want to completely open the border to allow Israel to ethnically cleanse the Gazan population because they knew that that was an Israeli strategy. Now, there's nothing to open because Israel destroyed it. Now, before Israel destroyed it, they offered Egypt to open it. Egypt said, we will open it so long as there's a Palestinian side, not Israel. They did that according to the Egyptian approach to not justify Israeli presence on the other side. Traditionally, they only wanted a Palestinian side to deal with. To them, if they would recognize Israeli presence on the Rafah crossing, that sets a precedent for the future that they did not want. This is how it's operated now. And Egypt, in terms of officially, they always say that we always authorize the opening of the Rafah crossing, and all of the complications come from the Israeli side. And that has been evident because in many cases you have the trucks who are loaded in Egypt and waiting to go in. Who's not allowing them to go in? Egypt, they don't need that pressure. They want them to go in. It was Israel. And then when Israel was opening the borders and allowing aid trucks in, they were attacking the aid trucks and exploding them. To this day, the other day they attacked a convoy that was passing gas for people to activate, cooking stuff. They killed approximately 6-7 people, just for no reason, just for fun. People who sell coffee, markets, they shoot them left, right, and center just to have fun and to make life more miserable for the people. So there's a limit to how much you can put responsibility on Egypt when it comes to opening the crossing. The only thing from Egypt is obviously the respecting of the treaties that you have in the middle of a genocide. Now, obviously, they broke their treaties with Israel in Sinai already, by having so many forces in Sinai, by having heavy weapons in Sinai. And But now you're talking about, obviously, Israel destroying the Rafah crossing and trying to move it to Karm Abu Sana. How likely will that work after a ceasefire? I don't think it will work. Why? Because the Palestinian side already said we will not agree to any existence, any presence of Israeli forces in any part in Gaza. Now, Israel tried to push for having forces at least in the Netzarim line, what's called as the Netzarim line, which is the central part of Gaza, where they have 3 bases and some of their main commands in Gaza, splitting the north from the south and trying to control that area and control the movement of people, and what's called the Philadelphia corridor. So the Palestinian side, they are refusing. Like Hamas told them, we will not agree to any presence anywhere. The first phase, they can potentially get away with it because the first phase of the ceasefire, again, if it happens, talks about Israel withdrawing from highly populated areas. And that's something that's agreed upon by all parties. But when you talk about phases 2 and 3 and Israel's ambition to still have forces in the Philadelphia corridor and Netzarim, I don't think they're going to succeed with that because, like they conceded with other parts, they will concede in that as well, in my opinion, if they want a ceasefire deal. Otherwise, the war will continue. So I hope that elaborates, and that was from Dahoud Happy. Muhammad Itani saying, can you please talk about the Arab League that has changed the labeling about Hezbollah, just not to label them a terrorist organization? Well, number one, it was a shameful labeling from the get-go. So if we want to understand what's labeling and who's being labeled, we need to understand who's labeling. The Arab League. What's the Arab League? A bunch of corrupt leaders not representing their people and bound by American imperialism. What's the Arab League? That's number one. It's like saying Britain or the UK or the EU or NATO label Hezbollah and Hamas terrorist organization. Who are you? Talking about genocidal states that killed tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people in the past, colonial powers, racist powers who believe in the concept of supremacy. These are the people who label these movements as, so who's labeling? And again, if you talk about these resistance movements, a fraction of the international community labels them as terrorist organizations. Like Hamas, 17% of the world. Who? The US, the UK, the EU, Paraguay and Japan and Israel, and New Zealand and Australia. About 34 countries. The world doesn't recognize them as that. The global corrupt Western powers do, which says a lot. Countries with the history of the biggest genocides in the past 2 centuries. The Arab League, what's the Arab League? A little puppet organization that's bound by US imperialism that do not represent their people, a bunch of authoritarian corrupt leaders, the majority of them, declared Hezbollah a terrorist organization. They clearly realize that there's a mistake. That's number one. Number two, they see where the wind is going. They see that Hezbollah is getting stronger. And we were having connections being reestablished too. They are, obviously we had this agreement between, firstly, Iran and Saudi Arabia that led to an agreement between Ansarullah and Saudi Arabia. We have closer ties between the Arab League and the Syrian government, and then you have closer ties between Turkey as well. Countries in Arab states are having slowly closer ties bit by bit. There's a slow departure of the US from the region, and the US presence in the region causes a lot of problems anyway. US, British, French presence in the region, they still have a lot of influence. And there's still a lot of corruption in Arab states. But firstly, it was a mistake from an organization that's corrupt anyway. And it's a good move. It's a good move because an organization like Hezbollah is a national organization that is concerned about the liberty of their people. And they act and they have the complete right by international law, by human law, before international law as well, by other laws too, to do what they're doing, defend themselves by any means against a brutal genocidal occupation next to them. Likewise with the Palestinian people, because many parts of Lebanese territories are still occupied. They're small, they're not very massive. The majority of Lebanon was liberated primarily by Hezbollah and the armed resistance in Lebanon, not the Lebanese army, by the way. And they have a full right to defend themselves and prepare against a reckless terrorist state next to them. This is the term that we should. Israel is the terrorist state sitting there planted in the middle of countries. It's a foreign terrorist entity planted there. And the nations of the region, including Hezbollah and everyone else, they have the full right to defend themselves by any means necessary. So that's a correction. Good. Do more good things. Arab League, there's a lot expected from you. As a matter of fact, Israel wouldn't have committed this genocide if Arab states next to it at least took a more brave position when it comes to Israel, used some leverage. Israel wouldn't have dared let one Palestinian get killed if they had someone threatening them. If someone next to them was threatening them, we will level you if you level any part of Gaza, they wouldn't have committed that. For every Palestinian you kill, we will do this for you. They wouldn't have done it. They're cowards. But because the Arab states next to them, represented in this Arab League, are complicit, right? As if we don't want to use different terminology than complicit, right? Or assisting or being quiet, whatever it is. Then we wouldn't have had that. But they're taking this step good, but way more is expected from Arab states and Muslim nations as well. And from any country, really, from any country in the world, any country that has any basic principles, right, should be taking a stance against a genocidal state. Simple. Not just the Arabs, everyone. Alian Ismail, how will they have capability to conquer Sinai and Lebanon while committing genocide at the same time? Well, that's the thing. It's arguable if they have the capability. But the fact that they're stating that is dangerous and shows you that they do have ambitions that are not hidden. So they're not even hidden ambitions. And also, they would do that if they have the power. And if the other side doesn't have enough power to defend themselves, they would do that. And guess what? They would receive they would receive certain backing from Western powers. They would receive certain backing from countries like the US, Britain, for example. After Israel gave Sinai back, there were people in Western countries close to the government criticizing the Sinai being handed back to Egypt, and they always believed that Israel did have a right over Sinai. Why? Because Israel is their neo-colonial project in the name of the Jewish people, right? They're garbage under the banner of Judaism thrown in the Middle East. They're neo-colonialist garbage in the Middle East under the banner of Judaism. They know that, and they want to control Sinai. But obviously Egypt, they didn't allow that. That's their territory. But to them, and including people in England, for example, they were saying that when the British mandate was there, there was a dispute over the Sinai territory, even when it came to the Ottoman Empire. Now, obviously, the British mandate was established after the Ottoman Empire. So they were arguing that we came here, and when it was the Ottoman Empire, the Sinai territory wasn't technically belonging to Egypt, by the way. No, that's disputed. So they create these arguments, as if they're the owners of the land, coming from England, coming from the US, telling me whose territory is whose in the Middle East. Wow, how arrogant. So they will be supported by certain governments if they were to attack. But again, there's deterrence to an extent. There is deterrence. And there are new equations. Firstly, Egypt is not Egypt of 73. Hezbollah is not the Hezbollah of a decade ago. And neither is Hamas. And Israel's failing in the weakest front. So how can they, like you're saying, go there? But the mere fact that they're saying that openly, by the way, not as if it's hidden, shows you the true intention of this neo-colonialist, expansionist, terrorist state. And let's go to your next one. Real Sheikh Apia, Infinite Content, Bob Marston, and Luna de Soul, thank you so much for your supers. Much appreciated. Dear fierce leader, shall I leave the Sinai now? I can't give you advice on Sinai. I don't think things are imminent. Although there's always going to be tension in Sinai. Infinite Content saying an invasion of Egypt is insanity. That's an open declaration of war, will prompt Egypt to close off the Suez and put the US in a jam. It is insanity, but Israel's insanity was always somehow accepted by Western powers. Insanity, recklessness, ugly racism, supremacy, genocide, apartheid, that's accepted. Why? Because the people who are accepting it share the same values and have done far worse things in history. That's why. But they're not obviously condemning that to the levels that require condemning, and they're still enabling this apartheid state. So within that region, you're only relying on the actions of the people in those places to defend themselves and create an equation, a level of deterrence when it comes to Israel. And that's something that is being created. That is something that is being created. Bob Marston, good day, Mahmoud. News reports that first, again, thank you guys for you all sent supers. Thank you so much. And Bob as well, good day, Mahmoud. News reports have emerged over the last few hours stating that the port of Eilat has been idle for the last 8 months and it is in financial distress from Gideon Goldberg, the CEO of the port. It's done. It's dead. It's roasted. That's how effective the sanctions and the embargo that Yemen is implementing in the Red Sea is how effective it is. Clearly, it's affecting them very much. And they even went to phase 4. Phase 4, that's stretching to the Mediterranean, following ships up to the Mediterranean that deal with Israel. Some of them tried to trick them, right? Go to another port, then go to Israel. It didn't work. They monitor everything. So yeah, it's diabolical. And Luna Sol, again, thank you so much for your super. And Matlas X as well, thank you. You said, why do brown and black people catch all the hell of genocide all across the globe? Well, look, I mean, obviously there's historical reasons, but I don't think it's only those people who faced genocides. Like, I mean, if you look at the 20th century and the massacres that happened in the 20th century, who were the people who died most? White, Christian, right? White Christians, or in some communist state, or in China, for example. And you're talking about governments doing that to its own people in many cases. So there's obviously an argument of this discrimination to justify the actions totally, 100%. There is a bigoted tone, racial tone, a racist tone, totally, absolutely. And some people do believe in the concept of racial supremacy, right, to this day. However, in the grand scheme of things, globally speaking, from a political perspective, that's only being used to justify the end result. And if the end result is white people, white Christians, Western Europeans, they will start saying things about their own people or come up with this new term, right? Like they did in the 20th century, right? It will happen. So that's why even I remember from the beginning of the war, I published a video. I didn't have many followers at the time or many people viewing it. I think a couple of hundred people maybe watched that video. I published a video basically saying, be careful of what you justify because you're the next step, if as and when the time is suitable. So if you're justifying genocide or if you're quiet about genocide for any reason, fear, cowardice, ignorance, whatever it is, then you're automatically justifying against you. Why? Because when it's suitable, it will come on you. Your government will make you the enemy, one way or another. Unproductive, the low class of society, burden on the state, whatever it is, they'll come with anything to justify mass murder. Look at the United States of America. How many people die unnecessarily in ways that are avoidable every single year? Avoidable, by the way, with very slight intervention from the state. Things to do with healthcare, things to do with social care, right? And they have the money. Don't tell me they don't have the money. They spent $3 trillion on Afghanistan just to waste weapons. So don't tell me they don't have money. They have money. There is a money tree. But they use the money somewhere else. It's a slow death. It's a slow death. If they want, they can prevent it. And who's dying in this slow death? Only ethnic minorities? No. And Dahoud Happy, thank you so much. And Matlas X for your supers, thank you so much. Matlas said, why shouldn't Yemen enforce sanctions on Israel when US can have sanctions on Cuba for 60 years? Do sanctions? Well, totally. But listen, this is how Western powers portray it. When we say sanctions, then sanctions. When we say that means terror, then that means terror. When we want that, then that's the international community. They have the audacity to speak on behalf or in the name of international community. What international community? The global South and the East? What international community? When Washington and London and Paris and other European capitals talk about the international community, you're talking about a couple of capitals in Western Europe and the US. That's it. That don't represent 15% of the world. What type of international community? So we need to be careful with this terminology, because the terminology is used to justify and as if it's a given, the international, what international community? Most of the world is opposed to what the US is leading when it comes to positions in the Middle East, by the way. And Europe is the US puppet. EU, what's the EU? What's NATO? What's the UK? Puppets for US capitalism. That's it. The US administration. That's why you're seeing rises in groups and here and there. They don't know what to do because in many cases they're not addressing the problem correctly. But many of them are realizing them to an extent. For example, what they're doing with Russia is motivated by US greed. And many people know that. Why everyone got the hit economically. Security-wise, they are destabilizing the security of Europe to that level for the first time since World War II. It's as if they haven't learned the lessons from World War II and why they had agreements after World War II to prevent things like this from happening. But they're repeating the same mistake. For the sake of what? For the sake of greedy powers. For the sake of greedy powers. Military-industrial complex, greed-led America, and other people in the background as well. Politicians are playing it as a front to serve this, and they are, some people are aware of the fact that now they actually want to occupy Russia, not defend Ukraine with that. But some people are not. Do you know what I mean? Okay, there's one here that about Saudi Arabia. Where did we go? Okay, that was missed for some reason. Iran plans. Question one: what good it will be for Hamas to accept phase 1 and return the hostages and then won't accept phase 2 and 3? After that, they won't have anything to maneuver. It's because they won't hand in all of the hostages, of course. They won't hand in all of the Israeli prisoners. What do you think? They're going to hand all of them in? They're not going to. They know that that's their biggest card, or one of their biggest cards, and they won't hand all of them. So it will start obviously with some of the elderly, some of the civilians and what have you. There was an argument between Israel and Hamas whether to include the female observers in the Israeli army as civilians or in the army. And Hamas are arguing that they're the army, they shouldn't be released in the first place. But again, Hamas showing leniency. But no, the top figures in the army, they will be there and use this leverage till the last second. Don't think that they're going to hand in everyone in the first phase. It's not going to happen. Faizi Timber, the jets enter Beirut. Yeah, to make these bomb sounds, not to attack. The only actual attack that was in Beirut, in the southern suburb, was when they assassinated the senior figure in Hamas, Saleh al-Aruri, alongside other Hamas figures at the time. And that's if you're referencing to the one that happened just in the last couple of days. Oms is saying, what would Putin do in response to Zionism aggression in Egypt? Well, interesting. I mean, I think Putin's already reviving the anti-imperialist countries, okay? In his recent tour, he visited North Korea. If I'm not mistaken, he visited Vietnam. He went to Cuba. The countries that the US doesn't like. Egypt has been getting closer and closer to Russia in recent years through their diversification of their military, obviously, and departing from this all form of reliance on the United States. So they've been careful doing that. Why? Because if they go all out with it, the US will start obviously seeing what they're doing and putting more restrictions. And they were already suffering from restrictions with their US aid, for example. So the US gives Egypt aid and gives Israel aid. And whenever Egypt wants something and Israel wants something, the US administration will always ensure that Israel has the upper hand. And that's something that the Egyptians always complained about when it comes to the US, because obviously the aid is tied with buying from the US. This is how foreign aid works, by the way. They steal the money from people through tax and hand it to the military-industrial complex. It's not as if they're helping other countries. They're not interested in helping anyone. They're interested in growing their pockets. So, but Egypt had closer ties with Russia, obviously. They've joined the BRICS, and I don't think Russia will take it lightly. Now, traditionally, the influence is American in Egypt, but like I said, that's changing. I think Russia will look at it as something very serious and could potentially take some measures to obviously prevent it, because you're talking about the Suez Canal. That's not only in relation to the US. The Suez Canal is for global economy. You're talking about a big percentage of global trade. Russia is very interested in that. There are other projects on the way, with Iraq and Turkey, other projects too, but they still haven't been implemented. And even if Russia is very self-sufficient to a high degree, and they still bypass Western sanctions through their relations with other countries, they wouldn't take that lightly. And usually the response of the bigger superpowers in the form of Russia and China will become more visible when the fight becomes bigger, when the war becomes bigger. So if you're talking about a country, not just an organization in a country, although even when it comes to an organization in a country, we're already seeing Chinese weapons in Gaza, lots of Russian weapons with Hezbollah. Do you understand? But if it gets bigger to Lebanon as a state, as a whole, Syria as a whole state, Egypt as a whole state, or Iran, you will start seeing them having bigger positions, in my opinion. Noshad, nice question. You say, will an invasion of Lebanon complicate any potential ceasefire in Gaza? Would Hamas feel the need to get involved to support Hezbollah? When it comes to Hamas, we are talking about defense now, more than attack. In an unlikely situation of the war actually de-escalating in Gaza, reaching a ceasefire, and Israel immediately goes on an all-out war with Lebanon, I think Gaza will remain faithful to Lebanon. Because don't forget, they decided to carry out the 7th of October, Hamas, without the leaders outside knowing, without Iran knowing, without anyone knowing, and they called them on the day, participate with us. Now that's a very tough position to put anyone in. Like, I decided to take this position, join me. It's even if it's your closest allies, you're putting them in an uneasy situation. But that shows the true colors of those countries. Iran, they continue to support through the movement to support Iraq. Lebanon, obviously, Hezbollah, the next day they participated. It shows you how much these people act based on principle. And this is what many people fail to understand. They act out of principle. Yes, you can say Iran supports them, totally. But these people, firstly, they have a level of independence and they act out of principle. Why would they drag themselves into a situation when all of them are suffering? None of these countries that are supporting the Palestinian people in Gaza are like, thriving there, counting their millions, or, having an amazing... No, well, Yemen, they just they just came out of starvation. Lebanon's economic situation is awful. The situation with the movements in Iraq is not great. But I think Hamas will definitely do something. What it would be, at what level, where, how, we don't know. But I think they will obviously support Hezbollah by any means possible. And obviously they have coordinated, joint rooms, right? They organize what they do abroad. There's a joint coordination room for all of them, and that was evident from their meetings in Iran. So they will know exactly what to do and where to do, and I think they will, alongside other resistance fronts as well. The Phil guy, with Labour victory impending in the UK, any chance the people can force new PM Kid Starver to push for a permanent ceasefire? They can't push him to do anything. You're electing a dictator in the UK. In the UK, it's elected dictatorships, and the US, elected dictatorships. They manipulate the people through mainstream media, brainwash them. Many people just follow like herds of sheep. Whatever the headlines tell them, they'll believe and follow. And of course, they can't force Starmer to do anything. It's proven in the UK, once you elect a prime minister, you shut up for the rest of the term. They fooled the people of Britain into agreeing to the stupid and harmful Brexit. They agreed to it. It all turned out to be a farce. Everyone since suffered greatly, at least economically. Many businesses shut, small businesses, right? People who betted on it made money. right? Or people who are already filthy rich, that's fine. But the average person, everyone suffered. Then they asked, hold on a second, can we reverse it? Too late, ya habibi, too late. What are you talking about? 3 million signed the petition for the government. They couldn't care less, the government. They spat on it. Ha ha ha, they were laughing. We got what we wanted, right? So pushing, you call them kid starver, pushing him to call for a ceasefire is a profound Zionist. Labor is rotten to the core. They showed their true colors when Jeremy Corbyn was leading the movement. I was surprised at the time how Jeremy did not actually immediately resign and push all of these people to form a genuine alternative for this corrupt party. So you can't force Keir Starmer to do anything. Keir Starmer will do whatever he wants. He's a profound Zionist, rotten from within. You can't change that. And you won't be able to force anything if you're for voting for him, right? So that's how it is. You're electing a dictator for the next 4 years. So once you do, you can kid around and swear at them and shout and act like, criticize by fooling, and that's just another way to pacify people. But when it comes to decision making, everyone can shut up and the government will do what they want. This is how it works. Marvin, thank you for your super. Marvin said government used false flag op to justify Islamophobia 9/11. Yeah, government used false flags to justify anything they want. Justify Islamophobia, wars, campaigns, whatever they do, whatever they need. And obviously Islamophobia was something greatly justified after 9/11, the false flag of 9/11, including the mass murder of people in the Middle East. Insignificant to you. Mahmoud, do you think Lebanon can bypass the US aircraft carriers if they join the war? Oh, totally. And Nasrallah warned them in the last speech. He told them, if we participate in the Mediterranean, it's going to be a different story. They have weapons to target anything they want in the Mediterranean, Hezbollah. And I think the biggest surprises we will see, obviously we're seeing lots of surprises, but the biggest surprise is going to be in the Mediterranean. Once an all-out war starts, expect the frogs, expect things to be happening in the Mediterranean, expect things to immediately be happening expect all of that. If an all-out war starts with Lebanon, things are already there. And the Secretary General of Hezbollah would not threaten unless he's backed by substance. He never just throws things in the air like that. They took down an Israeli Corvette in 2006. Did we forget that? Nasrallah was having a speech in the night, and live in his speech, he said, look at this ship being hit. Imagine how well coordinated everything was. And then a guy, probably on a rooftop in Lebanon, shot a missile on an Israeli ship. And there were reports that over 70 Israeli soldiers were killed at the time. And that's in 2006. We're 18 years ahead now. So they've developed so much, and they will surprise everyone in the Mediterranean. Teshikoma, do you think the Ridwan brigade has people in the pariah state? Probably. Ramplens is saying, and Starmer is supposed to be an international human rights lawyer. What a shame. Oh, it doesn't matter what their position is, or what they are, and what they're labeled and called. These people, you will see their true colors in tough moments. Don't show me your colors when you're all convenient and when there's nothing. Show me your true colors when there's a tough situation. This is how you view people, organizations, political parties, countries, right? Something like that is happening. Like Palestine, it was always the moral compass where almost everyone failed, right? Globally on the international scene, uh, many failed, especially the loudmouths. So the majority of the powers that are, traditionally corrupt, they failed. Global countries, they took good positions to an extent. Starmer, though, the man was justifying cutting the water off Gazans in the beginning of the war. It's arguable if it's legal or not. Everything becomes arguable, a matter of debate. Imdad, thank you, brother. And Paul, the West Bank is getting more intensive. Yes, it's getting more intense in the West Bank, and Israel has no answer. Even though they're taking measures that they haven't taken for 2 decades in the West Bank. And clearly the people in the West Bank are surprising everyone. Now they're talking about, they always link everything to Iran. They're talking about Iranian interference. And the West Bank people are suffering for so long. And they will find any way to protect themselves and to hit back. They live under the epitome of apartheid in the West Bank. So it's getting very intense, and Israel has no answer. Marvin, very interesting. Any chance action in Persian Gulf if war breaks out in Lebanon, Iraq, Iran attacked by US, Persian Gulf quiet, no Yemen action? You see, that's a very interesting question because they already know what's going to happen in the Persian Gulf, and they don't want that. So Iran already threatened them, right? Hormuz Strait, and now they're seeing what Yemen is doing with the Red Sea. Yemen, what's doing in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Imagine what Iran can do over there. So if Ansarullah only, and they're talking about affecting 90% of the trade now, if they did that, what can Iran do? So let's just realize, what's happening here. They choked Israel. It's a guillotine choke in martial arts terms. What Yemen is doing to Israel. It's a matter of time up until when they tap, right? And it looks like that was the last one here from Marvin. So we'll wrap it up there then. Let me see one last look. Yeah, I have just one more from Insignificant to you saying, question, if need be, would soldiers come directly from Iran core to help Lebanon? Iran has a strong military. If needs be, yeah, if needs be, that's a possibility. But up until we reach that stage, there are many other things to be done. As in, there are many other options up until you require literal manpower from Iran. You might have a couple of observers from Iran, maybe, helping, assisting here and there. But firstly, Hezbollah is more than capable. The people of Lebanon, they're more than capable on their own. That's number one. So don't underestimate that. Like Gaza, who's fighting in Gaza? The people in Gaza. And Hamas grew in power, by the way. For those of you who don't know, Hamas recruited more people now. Lebanon has enough men, but if they need more men, if they need more people to fight with them, they will bring people from other parts. I think, you can bring people from Iraq, bring people from Yemen, from Syria, can bring all sorts, and Iran, of course, if needs be. We'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Pleasure being with you and chatting to you. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. Again, sorry if I don't address all of the questions or comments, just time limit really, and in the live chat we keep missing things, so apologies for that. But thank you so much. I appreciate your participation. Obviously, I appreciate everyone participating. Thank you. Thank you to all of our members, viewers, and subscribers, and new members and subscribers. Well, welcome. Special thanks to everyone who sent supers. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. Sumera, Nivea, Real, Sheikha, Infinite, Bob, Luna de Sol, Matlas X, Dahoud, Matlas, and Marvin. Thank you so much for all of your supers. Apart from that, for those of you who haven't watched it, go ahead and watch my other video that I posted earlier on. I might have another video. No, I can't promise, but I might have another video tonight about Lebanon. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for joining me again, and stay blessed, everyone. And I will see you soon in the next video. Take care and peace be on all of you. Salam, everyone.